Welcome to SoFlo by Lucas Miller. Lucas's latest collection of 13 short stories, ranging from the gross and silly to heart-wrenching thrillers of cosmic proportions. Join Lucas as he takes you beyond the beaches and shows you the dark side of the Sunshine State. Welcome to SoFlo, a collection of weird Florida horror by Lucas Miller. Available January 14th, 2024. Brought to you by the Evil Cookie Publishing. Welcome to another episode of Dead Headspace. I'm your host, Patrick R. McDonough, joined always by my friend Pat. Let's try that again.
This is going great.
I'm Patrick R. McDonough.
I'm Tits McGee.
And I'm done. I'm just gonna leave now.
I'm Patrick R. McDonough. Don't remember the rest. I'm really having a brain fart. That's all right. You can laugh at me. That's fine.
It's your show, dude.
I know.
I'm laughing at the situation. I'm not laughing.
No, laugh at him. He deserves it.
Just laugh at Pat.
Welcome to another episode of Dead Headspace. My name is Patrick R. McDonough, joined by my friend Brennan LaFaro. Say hello, Brennan.
Hello, everybody.
And our other friend, Candace Nola. Say hello.
Hello.
Today we are talking with the author of Freeburn, Drew Huff. Say hello, Drew Huff.
Hello, everyone.
What got you into horror, Drew?
Oof. I like to say that I didn't try to go into writing horror as much as I wanted to just write stories that were raw and unhinged as they needed to be. You know what I mean? Like I look at some of the other things I've written, like Exodonist and Divine Flesh, and Exodonist especially. It's not horror as much as it is I'm taking a concept or an idea that's weird, bizarre, and I'm just taking it to its logical conclusion. Sometimes that logical conclusion is a little dicey. Yeah, Freeburn is a little bit different from the other things I've written, however, in that it's a little more random. It's a little more, I didn't quite know what I was doing as much. And there are a lot of other things I will go into, but.
Was it the first manuscript you wrote, or did you write a few before?
But I did end up rewriting it basically from scratch. So no, actually, it's not the first manuscript. The first manuscript I ever wrote was 2021 or so. And I had this idea, and it's still a really good idea. I'm going to come back to it someday when I have more skill, probably after I finish my current project, truth be told. So I wanted to write a subversion of the zombie genre. A pathogen that infects you, and you're still you. You still have your memories, your family, your loved ones, they're still alive, they're still living. It's just they have this pathological urge to infect everyone around them with this pathogen. It's almost like Shivers, that old horror movie, and there were a lot of sexual overtones and a lot of themes of, and so I just wanted to write a manuscript. I said, okay, I'm going to write this manuscript. If it's garbage, it's garbage. At least I'll know that I wrote a book. I had written 40,000 words of a manuscript when I was 17 or so with Lori, actually, from Freeburn. She was one of the first characters I ever came up with. But I wanted to finish this manuscript. So I tried doing National Novel Writing Month. I realized very quickly after 50,000 words in 1 month, that I needed to extend it to give the manuscript justice. So I'm extending it. I'm writing this manuscript. And the thing about writing your first manuscript, no matter how well you've studied writing, no matter how many craft books you've read, it's going to suck. Expecting to be good at writing without actually writing is like reading a manuscript, reading a instruction manual on woodworking, and then getting a bunch of wood, going to a wood shop, and trying to build a birdhouse or something really elaborate. It's like no matter how much you've read and know, you're going to suck at something. And it's probably going to be something you're not really expecting. So I still have that little manuscript because it's fucking hilarious. Sometimes I like to look at it from time to time whenever I feel down about myself. I'm like, you know what? I didn't put in a 4-paragraph description about the moon and how the moon just has always shown, no matter what happens below the moon. That's literally how I opened it. I thought it was Steinbeck. I was like, the moon shone bleakly as it always had. I'm motherfucking Steinbeck. Look at me. I'm opening with an atmospheric description. And then I got halfway into this manuscript, and I realized very quickly I had no plot. I didn't even know what plot was. So it was a process bit by bit. Every time I would write something and it would suck, I'd look it up. I'm like, okay, why does this suck? Like the dialogue seems weird. And so I'd go down a rabbit hole, and then I'd figure out what makes good dialogue, what makes bad dialogue. Okay, I suck at plotting. I need to read books on plot structure. And that's the troubleshooting way is how I learn best. So I kept doing that. End of the manuscript was like completely different from the beginning, but it was still terrible. And I just looked at what I had written, and I actually had some of the cosmic horror themes from Divine Flesh were kind of coming through in that. And I realized that I had a really good idea, but I was going to have to rewrite this whole thing from scratch, like completely and utterly. And I wanted to come back to it when I had more skill, because I wanted to pull off this epic like The Stand. It ended up being 110,000 words.
It's a lot.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, one of the big plot twists was the Raider King, who is a cannibal, who is our protagonist that we've been following the entire time as he trails through the wasteland in search of a cure, arrives at the lab where he's supposed to find this doctor. It turns out that the doctor is actually one of the infected, and they're really smart, and they've been trying to come up with a more exciting, quicker spreading version of the pathogen. He's been infected with it the entire time, and his whole journey throughout this book, as he's been interacting with people, he's been infecting them. Everything was for nothing. And so he's like the leader of this terrorist group that overthrew the existing authority when society started to crumble. It's like this. I had such. Sorry, I can't believe I'm like going poetic about my first manuscript, but that's the kind of batshittery I took into Freeburn when I wrote Freeburn. So,
But it's got some like Vonnegut level satire to it, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
thanks. Oh my God, I'm blushing a little. Yeah. So after I did that, I was like, okay, I want to get published someday. This thing was terrible. I want to like write a book. I'm gonna just write a really marketable book. I'm gonna just write like, and so I was just kind of, so this was early 2021. We are talking like February or March 2021 when I started writing Freeburn, the very first draft, like draft 0. And so I took a character that I'd had from a very early draft of a different manuscript, Lori, that I made when I was like 17. I was like, wouldn't it be fucking hilarious if your gas station white trash attendant, frizzy haired, 40 years old, wouldn't it be fucking hilarious if she were like this pyromaniac serial killer?
That's why it's funny.
So
That's why it's a
Lori,
Kurt Vonnegut, because
yeah,
it's
yeah, a
insane, but it is
pyromaniac
funny.
named Lori. And so
Yeah.
I took this character and I sort of originally in the old manuscript I wrote when I was 17, she was the protagonist and she wasn't like a terrible person. She was just very mentally ill. But I took this character, I'm like, all right, I feel like this could be a good villain. So in the earliest iteration of Freeburn, the character of Mallory was actually a man, and she was 666's like BFF, just the BFF. But I was just throwing a lot of spaghetti at the wall and seeing what stuck. I didn't have I was just like, all right, this is this, this is this. Man, wouldn't it be super fucked up if someone had like a botulism like ability to paralyze someone by touching them? Oh, that's pretty cool. Like, what if he's an experiment? Let's throw, yeah. So I was just throwing a lot of stuff together. I was having a really good time. Well, and so I sat down, and a character that would later become Mallory was supposed to be the protagonist, actually. But I sat down to do something called a character voice journal. And I was like, okay, well, what about the dude with the fucked up hands? I should probably write something from his perspective. I had a basic grasp on his personality. Like, oh, he's cool. He's like carefree. He's very sweet. He's very kind. He's kind of like, not like lazy, but he's a little irresponsible, whatever. So I sat down and I wrote that little snippet that you see in chapter 2 of Freeburn where he's going on like, I say, these are my hands. here's how I describe them. And where he goes on to describe what his hands look like. And that just came out of me. And that was when I realized that this dude was the real protagonist. He was a lot more mean, a little more cynical before I had a grip on his character. But honestly, that first draft of Freeburn was a completely different manuscript from the ones that came after it, like completely different. I was like, just wouldn't it be hilarious if I like wrote about this serial killer? Like he sets a serial killer free from hell, and I don't know, like he has to put her back. Fuck, I don't know. We've got Mallory, and that's her mother, and there's that, and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have any theme. I didn't know what theme was. I didn't know how to take a theme or a plot and really, really put it into a manuscript the way I do now, where everything is centered around theme and there are a lot of different threads, but they all center back on that main theme. I didn't know how to do that. So I wrote it. I wrote it. It was, again, a completely different story. The basic plot points were the same, but the dynamics were different. There was a whole different love interest. It was super weird, super trippy, but I finished it. I knew it was going to need a lot of work. And I remember the day I finished that very first draft of Freeburn because of what happened after. And you two have read my author's note. So I finished it on October 6th, 2021. And as much as I don't like to be a Debbie Downer, this was very vital to the writing of Freeburn. My father passed away very suddenly at age 51 it was an accidental drug overdose on October 12th. And when all of that happened, my life changed very rapidly. It was everything because he had passed away. So I already had a very complex relationship with my father because he loved me as best he could, but he was pretty abusive. And I had spent a lot of my life growing up trying to succeed on my own and move out so I wouldn't have to deal with that. He was getting a lot worse that last year. I just didn't really talk with him as much because of that. The last few times I saw him, he was like so high that he didn't even like understand really what was going on or what was happening. It was rough. And the thing with addicts is you cannot be around them when they're in their active addiction. I know I'm going to offend a lot of people. You can't. They will drag you down with them, not because they want to, because that's what they do. People love to say, oh, they don't mean to. They don't mean to. And I agree, they don't. That makes it worse, not better, because when someone doesn't mean to do something, they can't stop it. And, it's just, I've seen a lot of family members die because of addiction. I've seen a lot of them lose their lives, their houses, their children. I loved him. I was trying to kind of stay away from him as much as I could. And he was pretty violent. He could be very abusive at times. But I still loved him as much as I could. So he died. He died very suddenly. And when it happened, again, he didn't have a will. He didn't have anything. I am an only child. He didn't have any like spouses. He had a crazy stalker girlfriend who ended up like stalking me later down the road, kind of blamed me for his death. A lot of people had a lot of opinions about me, frankly. But when that happened, it was like one day I was supposed to go on this trip to the East Coast to this little art workshop. I had gotten off work. I had to go on my plane at like 7 p.m. The timing was crazy. And so I'm at the airport, like waiting to go on my little flight for my little vacation I had Wednesday evening. And I get this call from my mom. And my mom's like, Drew, are you like on the plane? Did you get on the plane? And I have to be like, well, no, I'm fine. I'm just here at the airport. What's going on? Don't get on the plane. I'm like, okay, look, dude, I planned for this trip for months. There is nothing you're going to do or say. I'm sorry. I don't know if there's been some attack or something in New York. I want to care. The world's so fucked up and crazy that I don't. There's nothing you're going to say or do that's going to make me cancel this trip. I have lived my life. I've worked my ass off to have a job with health insurance that pays well. I'm finally taking a vacation after the years of shit I took to get that job and get everything. I'm going on this trip. Drew, stay there until your grandparents and I get there. Okay, fine, Mom. So this is like 5:30 or so. So I had time. I'm like, okay, yeah, fine. And that's when, but I'm starting to get the feeling that something's really, really wrong. Like I'm starting to get physically nauseous and I just kind of know that something's not right. And that's when the phone calls start coming in. They're all from my dad's side of the family. His work buddies are trying to call me through Facebook Messenger. And I'm just sitting there looking at the phone vibrate in my hand just constantly. And I know, like, I feel my hands going numb, like as I'm there, I'm starting to go into shock. And that was when I knew he was either dead or he was in the ER. My mom and my grandparents pull up. They kind of get me and my stuff into the car. Mom kind of, talks the flight attendant. I had checked in, so she was able to get my ticket refunded because they kind of picked up that something was not right. They get me into the car, and my mom just is like, Drew, your dad, he died. He died. And I didn't believe it at first. Like I laughed. I just it just came out of me because it was so. He's 51 for fuck's sake. I didn't expect anything like that to happen. And then that was when it started to sink in that this was real. My grandparent, my mom, my grandparents, they wouldn't joke about something like that. And mom kind of explains it like he went home from work early the day before. He didn't show up for work today, which was very unlike my father. That was part of the reason why his addiction got as bad as it did. He wasn't feeling well. He would use. That's how it is for so many blue collar workers in America. And that's what a lot of people don't understand when they talk about addiction. If you feel sick, fuck you, go to work. You're not feeling too good, fuck you, go to work or your kids don't eat. And so that's why you see such high rates of addiction. Oh, your shoulders hurt? Fuck you, figure it out, go to work. That is how it is, especially if you're not part of a union. So that was part of the reason why he used. He wasn't feeling good. So they're like, yeah, he didn't come into work today. His work buddies went to his house to see what was wrong because that was so unlike my dad. Like he would go to work if he had the flu. The flu. He was a concrete asphalt laborer. He just did concrete and asphalt my whole life. So they went to his house, they knocked on the door, he wasn't responding, they look in the bedroom window and he's dead in his bed. So yeah. So because I was the next of kin, all of that responsibility was just put on me. My parents had been divorced since I was around 3. So it was also financially really hard because at the time I'd saved up a little bit of money. I had to blow all of that on the probate attorney. I was like $7,500. If my dad would have wanted a funeral, I would have taken out a loan or found some way to make it work. He didn't. He always said he never really gave a shit what happened to his body. I just got the cheap cremation. It was another $1,200. There were just expense after expense. I had to pay the mortgage on the house, had to pay the power bills for the house. It was just thing after thing. I had to deal with a lot of family drama. His brother's like an addict. That was not fun to deal with. Tweaker girlfriend just was spurging out on me. She didn't even talk to me. I tried to have it, extend an olive branch to her at the funeral, and she didn't even talk to me. She literally just went like this. It was so bad that my stepdad, when he saw that, stepdad's the most easygoing person ever. He almost punched her. He was mad. And he's super easygoing, super forgiving. Anyway, the rest of that's in my author's note for Freeburn. I don't want to go on about the pity story. I feel like I've already gone on too long. But the thing is, I was dealing with a lot. I had a lot of other things going on. And so, but one thing that I just haven't seen enough in grief horror and horror in general is the anger. And that was something that I felt so bad about because I wasn't really sad as much as I was really mad. I was very angry. I felt terrible for being angry. I was angry at the way things had turned out. I was angry at the fact that I would never really get to talk to him. I was angry that all of this had gotten dumped on me. I was angry at the drama and all of the shenanigans and BS his side of the family was pulling. And around the same time, my grandfather on my mom's side, who was there with me and supporting me, got diagnosed with esophageal cancer. When they took him off his anticoagulants, he had a stroke. We are still dealing. He's kind of okay from that, but we're still dealing with that. So My mother, my grandma on my mom's side, Mimi and Papa, they were all busy dealing with Papa's stuff when a lot of this was going down. He had to go to Seattle. So that support of my family, I mean, they were there as much as they could be realistically, but then they were gone too. It was just, but I'm a workaholic. I function. I found out he was dead on Wednesday night. I was back at work on Monday. Like, what was I going to do? Not work? So I inherited the house. I had to make some very quick decisions because it was getting to be a little financially hard to pay the mortgage on the house and my little apartment. I was like, free house. I want to move into the house. There were 20 years of bad memories in that house. I had a lot of very terrible things happen in that house. It was not a good idea. That house had something wrong with it. So when all of this was going on, I was just like numb for a month or two. And then I started rewriting Freeburn around December. And after I'd kind of moved into the house and things were settling, and this time when I rewrote it, I knew what I was really writing about. I was writing about the anger and frustration and sadness that I felt with having my dead parent literally come back from the grave. Like my parent died and like still fucking up my life. And I'm sorry, that probably sounds terrible of me to say. So I poured in just all of what I was feeling and channeling and just all of the anger and trauma that I was dealing with into that second rewrite of Freeburn. I basically rewrote it from the ground up, like 80,000 words of that 100,000 word manuscript. And that's one of the reasons why Freeburn is as intense and unhinged as it is, because I was just pouring all of that in. It was kind of therapeutic, but I put a lot of myself into 666, where he feels terrible for being angry. He feels like he's turning into a demon. He's angry. But he's also just like trying really, really hard to hold everything together. Just like, I'm not angry, I'm not angry, I'm not angry. Oh my God, I've got to just keep functioning, like through gritted teeth. And I really put a lot of myself into 666. I put some of myself into Mallory too, where has this parent that was kind of garbage. The parent comes back from the dead and she's just really struggling with that because I got my father's temper. Not all of it, but I got a pretty decent amount. And yeah, it's just hard. I feel like, I'm fine now. Things were pretty bad for a while. I had to deal with a lot of things, but I'm fine now. But I can't talk about Freeburn without at least mentioning why that was something that was, why it's so intense. But yeah, I just wish that we could write more honestly about angry trauma, because I see so much depressed trauma, and I'm not saying that's not valid, but sometimes I kind of just felt like I was a failure as a woman because I wasn't like sad or crying. I was just angry. I was pissed. I was like functioning, and I was doing a pretty good job at functioning and organizing. And I tried to renovate the house. I was like crying. What am I, a fucking pussy? Let's put up a backsplash. Tile. Boring. I made that house look really good before I sold it. I'll say that. I was literally just like renovating, painting. I put up light fixtures. I was wiring stuff. My dad had punched a lot of holes in the drywall like over the years, so I had to like patch those. I was like, yeah, and so at the time, my eating disorder just spiraled out of control, which was not good. It was less that I was trying to restrict and more that I had so much other shit going on that I didn't like eat. I was like, well, I'm not hungry. I'm not going to eat. The thing about having a restrictive eating disorder, when you've had it for a very long period of time, your body's hunger cues turn off. Your body, your stomach won't grumble because your body thinks there's no food. So you literally don't feel hungry. You feel really energized. And yeah, that eating disorder just kept spiraling until I kind of hit a rock bottom in late 2022. And that was when I got assessed, and they were at the, local eating disorder clinic, and they were just like, dude, we were trying to assess you to see if you need to be like full hospitalized. I'm like, my health's fine. I have periods and shit. I'm good. I'm fine. They're like, no, you're not, Drew. Drew, it was really eye-opening to actually, so partial hospitalization is 40 hours a week. You are there, except for the fact that you get to go home and sleep at night, you are in a psych ward. For all intents and purposes, they will, if you have to pee after a meal, they will look at your pee to make sure you haven't stuck a finger down your throat. Like, we're talking that level of, and it has to be, I'm not complaining, but it was just, again, it was so eye-opening to see how little I was literally like living off coffee, and I'd eat like a lean cuisine a day, and that was like full for me. I had no energy. My brain was like full of static, but I was just so blissfully unaware. And I was exercising on top of all of that. Eating disorders, man, do not fuck around with those. They are terrible. All of the people that I was at the clinic with that had an eating disorder, like in their 30s, all had some kind of autoimmune disease around their digestion. They had IBS. They had like, your body cannot run on fumes for a long period of time before you start racking up those points, those damage points. Yeah, it was, they had to start me on this meal plan. They start everyone on a little toddler meal plan. It's like for an 8-year-old child, I think, or whatever. Like, and then after, a few days of that, they upped your meal plan. I was like full on this little child-sized meal plan. It was, yeah. I'm doing pretty good though. I eat like a pretty decent amount. I'm on my meal plan. But even so, after all this time where I'm pretty solid with the meal plan and I eat like a pretty consistent amount, I still have to be really on top of that, because if I just like intuitively eat, I don't eat. Like, I don't think about food. I don't like it. It's weird. It's really weird. And it's frustrating sometimes, because if I slip up for like a day, a lot of restrictive thoughts will come back. I start getting really weird and obsessive. It's just weird. Anyway, it was part of the reason why the first draft of The Divine Flesh was such a weird clusterfuck mess. That was the one you didn't see, Candace. Because I was trying to like white knuckle my way, and my brain was just like staticky, because that's how it is when you're restricting. Anyway, sorry to ramble. It's just a lot. I'm gonna let you guys speak now.
Don't apologize.
Little,
Don't apologize. I just wanted to say about the anger thing. When my brother almost died in 2019, I felt like burning the world down. Driving from Jersey to Boston, 7-month pregnant wife. I wasn't gonna do anything dumb. In my head, I'm like, someone give me a reason, but
yeah.
I get it. That's all. That's all I wanted to say. Now, I think Candace was gonna jump in.
Yeah, I was. So the anger thing I could touch on, but I do want to get into something else right
Yeah.
after that. So I will just say, I think as far as anger goes, when somebody close to us dies, the rest of the world doesn't expect you to showcase the anger. They
Yeah.
expect the grief, they expect the hurt, the
Mhm.
tears, the crying. They don't expect you to vocalize the anger because, oh, but they're gone. We don't speak ill of the dead. We don't do that of the dead.
Yeah.
And I think we're just so trained to not show that, that we still don't. And I think that's why you don't really see a lot of the anger side of it in things that we write or things that we watch, because it's one of those almost unwritten rules that you can show the grieving and the sorrow and the tears, but you can't show that person standing over the coffin screaming at them like, why did you leave me? Or you
Yeah.
selfish son of a,
Yeah.
because that's not what you do.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I do completely understand the anger thing. Been there, done that several times throughout my life, and it sucks. But I also think that anger is one of the first things that we feel and one of the most valid things that we feel for various reasons, you know? But moving on to your book, because that is why we're here, and we did just hear a whole lot about it, which was great.
Yeah.
But let me kind of restructure you a little bit. And for the people that are
We
listening and
can like cut some of
everything,
this too. We can like totally cut some of it or shorten it. I just was
I don't think we need to. I think you were great and you needed to explain a lot of that because that all went into the finished story. But
Mhm.
now that we have that, what would you tell a reader? Like, what is your pitch to
Ooh,
draw them into the story itself? Let's talk
okay.
about the finished story. We know how we got there. So,
Yeah.
what is your pitch now? So, I'm picking this up. Why do I want to read it?
Okay. I actually have a really solid one sentence pitch for it. That I talk to when I'm mentioning this book to people. I'm like, okay, this depressed dude with a heart of gold who's been in this institution his entire life with his girlfriend accidentally sets a serial killer free from hell. Pyromaniac serial killer free from hell. Well, here's the twist. She's his mother-in-law. She's his girlfriend's mother. And it just turned into this really messy, twisted family reunion as he's trying to frantically put the serial killer back into hell and negotiate the depth of his trauma as it comes up.
Nice. That is one hell of a pitch. So, my next question, and we did hear a little bit about some of the people
Mm-hmm.
in the book. Um, we know which one I think you most relate to, which is 666 himself.
Mm-hmm.
But which one did you have the most fun with writing it?
Oh my God. Okay, we all know the answer. We all know the answer. The one we're all having the most fun reading about, Lorraine. She was just so I wanted to write the most disgusting woman I could possibly write because I was real sick and tired of seeing these like, oh, she's a serial killer, but she only preys on men, so it's cool. Oh, she's sexy. Oh, I'm like, no, fuck that. I actually read a lot of true crime while I was researching this book because I wanted it to be gritty. I'm like, I want to write the most disgusting fucking woman I can possibly write because if you're a sociopath and you're preying on people, you're fucking disgusting. There's no way fans or buts about it. I don't care what people. I wanted to de-romanticize the serial killer, and a lot of the things I put in, like arsonist, like fapping, that's a real thing. That's actually a real thing you'll see in true crime manuals. They will more with males, but yeah, but I also said I'm not going to make her fat because that's been way overdone. That's terrible. That does a disservice to so many fat women. So I said I'm going to make the like this cute little freckled, curly haired, yes, Southern belle, with a cigarette in her hand, kind of white trashy, and someone that you would see traditionally as the final girl in a lot of stories. I'm going to make her the villain. Just this disgusting, depraved, and I didn't even give her a tragic backstory. I was like, fuck that. Lorraine just does what she wants. She does not give a fuck. She's like the honey badger. Lorraine's just going to do what Lorraine's going to do. And that was part of what was so fun to write. It was just her just doing her thing, not giving a fuck. She's like, I want to set a fire. I want to set a fire. I want a lobotomized guard I can have follow me around and just kill and paralyze people for me. I'm gonna do that. I want to return myself from the dead. Yeah, I need to get revenge on my motherfucking traitor boyfriend, Eddie. I'm gonna do that. And she's just like, she's just, I mean, you hate her when you're reading about the terrible things she does in the book, but then, he was
Mhm.
fun, right? So fun.
Yeah, it was. It was wild. Brandon or Patrick, you guys got something to jump in with, or
Yeah,
maybe
I'm
Andrew
jumping
can
in.
just
First of
take
all,
over.
I appreciate the fact that Drew is from Eastern Washington and manages to somehow slip into Brooklyn every 5 minutes or so. Where that's coming from, I don't know. The Southern accent's pretty good too. So I guess what I wonder is with this being like with this book, especially the second draft, being just this powder keg outpour of just pure Drew. What was the editing process like?
Well, the one that's released, that's like draft 9. So I rewrote it again and again. Before I subbed it to Dark Matter Inc., I actually had to rewrite the beginning segment So there's a thing in writing that I don't think is talked about enough. Everyone talks about writer's block. Nobody talks about having too many ideas, but that's a very real thing that I've dealt with. It's like my brain is like, okay, the characters need to go to a library. Something needs to happen. And my brain's like, why can't it be a magic library? It's a magic library. And here's the backstory of the magic library. And then before I know it, I've got like these weird offshoots. And like I totally just Stephen King the plot. I'm like, I do what I want. And then I've had to really learn to tone that down and focus on the main core theme. Freeburn, I did less of that because I didn't do that to begin with. And it's a little, I don't want to say it's like sloppy, but it's a little less, it's a little rougher than some of my other things that are going to come out real soon. Man, it was just rewriting one section after another because I didn't go in with a solid plot outline to begin with. Now, when you're plot outlining, you don't need to have every single point nailed down, but you need to at least have the basic structures, midpoint, break into two, the all is lost moment, the build up to the finale. You need to at least have the basic structure down. And then as you're writing it, that gives you the freedom to change and manipulate what happens at those points. The real tricky thing is making the characters' protagonist development line up with those plot points. There's always, the external story, but then there's the internal story that you have to plot out too. And if you have side characters, you have to plot out their arcs. And the real trick to having very good developed like characters in your fiction is to have those spaced out a little differently. So maybe there's just this boring scene at the 60% mark. The main characters had this awful revelation at the midpoint that changes everything. Well, while they're trying to achieve the main plot objective, why can't we have the midpoint, development for the side character, as a little sidekick, as Buddy? You see what I mean? And in this fashion, you can have very taut fiction, very tight fiction, and still have very deep character development, different plot lines, subplots. It's a lot to organize and coordinate, but you kind of feel it out.
Yeah. And I agree with you that, obviously the conversation steers a lot more toward shit, I don't know what to do with this story or, whatever. But one person I have heard talk about, what you kind of are hinting at here is Josh Mallerman. And he had shared with us that there is just this innate pressure that a lot of people feel to, especially with like a first book, let's say, or even a first book that we know is a first book that's heading toward publication, to just put everything you have and everything you are into that story, and to fight that urge, because the book can kind of be, I don't want to say one note, that kind of gives a connotation, but it can have a central theme, and it doesn't need to involve everything plus the kitchen sink.
Yeah.
I kind of want to go back to something you said earlier. You talked about, your woodworking analogy, how you could read every book in the world on woodworking and you still wouldn't be able to build a birdhouse the first time. And with you saying that Freeburn ended up being something like the ninth draft, I'm sure the birds appreciate that you didn't just make them live in a fucked up little, weirdly shaped house, that you kept going at it till you got it right. There's a work ethic in there, and a desire to learn and improve. But going back, even further than that, you had talked about how you have always been, a huge fan of reading books, stories. Books are your friends. So, long-winded question, but how would you say that being a lifelong reader prepared you to become a writer? And if you can find a way to tie it in, how does that work ethic kind of take that storyteller ability and turn it into what you are now?
It's definitely interesting. When you read a lot of books, it primes you to understand what's good and what's not good in a way that I think it's harder to really pick up on when you're an adult and your emotions are a little more subdued. They're under the surface. One of the most pivotal moments I really had in my writing career happened when I was about 10 or 12 years old. maybe a little older. Actually, no, I was around 14 or so. So there was this young adult series that I'd read, the Pendragon series, and they're actually really well written. These are like really good books. DJ McHale can write very well. They're very thick books. There's like 14 of them. It's a crazy, like long, epic series for kids, young adults. So I read all of these books. I was waiting for him to release the finale. I was so excited. I still remember finishing Soldiers of Hala, which is the last book, and just like it's written from a first person point of view. So you know, the protagonist is, you're very close to the protagonist. And so, and these, you know, this epic journey through worlds and this and that. And this was how it ended. The last chapter, like right when you think he's going to embrace his destiny and sort of like accept that his life didn't turn out the way it was supposed to, that it kind of stopped when he was 14. It closes with the magical powers that be teleported Bobby, who is 21 at this point in the series, all the way back to that night he was taken on the grand adventure by his uncle when he was 14, taken to all these different worlds. And instead of that happening, his life just happened as if that never occurred. And it literally culminates with his life just being lived normally. He's in a hospital dying, you know, at the end of his life with his wife that he has. He has no memory that any of this ever happened or occurred. And then, you know, Uncle Press shows up and is like, here are all the journals you wrote. This is like what happened in your alternate timeline. And I was so mad when that happened that I like almost physically threw the book. I still remember how betrayed and how angry I felt. Like, this sounds so silly. I mean, I actually got to meet DJ McHale when I was a kid. They had a cavalcade for authors at my school. I still have the signed page that he autographed. Like, I really thought, I mean, he's a great writer. But I still remember how betrayed I felt as a reader. And I didn't understand for years why I felt so disappointed and betrayed and let down until I saw this review that basically laid it out and said, everything because you were told that all of these characters and everything you've read didn't happen. Now it's meaningless. You, the reader, had your time wasted. And that's why this book is not, it had a disappointing ending to the series. I know that's somewhat of a long.
It was all a dream trope, but nobody likes that.
Dude, it basically was that.
Yeah.
But for a series of 14 books, and each of them is like 500 pages, they're like this thick. So that primed me as a kid when I was reading to understand, you know, not just craft stuff, but what you don't do to your readers, I guess. And a lot of other books and a lot of other things, you know, I'd read a book and be like, oh, this character just whines. I don't like this. What? This plot twist, this is so stupid. I don't like this. And I like to analyze things. Whenever we go to a movie when I was a kid, I'd analyze the plot, I'd analyze the characters. Like, I was literally that kid. I would like sit with my parents in the car. I'm like, what characters did you like? What about their arc? What did you think of this midpoint? I always loved to pick apart and analyze plot. And so I just, sorry, I'm rambling right now.
You're very smart, so please keep talking.
Oh, thank you. And so in that way, that was how reading really prepared me to be a writer. And then I guess it was less, when I grew up and I started to take this more seriously and reading craft books, it was less new knowledge and more having words to put what I already knew intuitively into a more clear format. Like, oh, like you said, it was all a dream trope. It's like, oh, that's why I didn't like this. Yeah.
But I think you make an important point that, like, I've always, you know, I didn't write a damn word until I was 34 years old. And at the same time, I almost felt like the stuff that I wrote when I was that age, I couldn't have written, you know, I couldn't have started earlier, that I was getting ready to do it. And that's with every book, with every story I wrote, both the ones that made a positive impact, but also the ones that made a negative impact. Like you say, the ones that say, like, well, now I know, you know, I don't want to do this. You know, you might hit a wall, so to speak, in your own writing and say, I could go that direction. Oh, but no, this story I read when I was 9 did this, and it was fucking
Yeah.
stupid as shit. So, yeah, no, I think it does. Every story
Mhm.
does kind of make an impact, whether you realize it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick, would you like to jump in?
Yeah, so we talked about this off here, but I just want to, since the listeners didn't have a chance to hear this, I want to hear what you think about having ADHD, how you think that dictates what you write or how you write or how you view the world. Um,
Mm-hmm.
uh, Anything on ADHD. I want to hear your point of view on it.
Well, oh, thanks, Pat. I really appreciate it. Well, it definitely was part of the reason why I was such a reader. Um, I was dealing with a lot and books. I don't want to say I hyper focused, but I was a quick kid. When a teacher would finish something up on the board, I would just get, I just tune out and I just start reading a book under my desk. And the thing about having ADHD is that it makes you this idea factory. It really does. Like it's worse if I don't take my ADHD medication. I didn't realize I had ADHD until I was like pretty recently, actually. Um, I was like, oh, that's why I constantly drink coffee. Oh, that's why it helps me focus. Oh, um, just going off on so many different tangents because you want to do everything all of the time. And that's definitely part of the reason why I think I run into having too many ideas, wanting to go on too many tangents, wanting to just get things going. I also think ADHD makes my plots a little more quick. That's one thing that you can always say about me. I write things, they move very quickly because I know what it's like to just have a book in front of you and like just be like, come on, man, turn a few pages. Come on, when's this plot going to kick off? I don't care about this character's existential nihilism. I don't need to read Nietzsche for babies. If I wanted to read Nietzsche or Kant, I'd pick up a philosophy book. A few more pages. At this point, I'm just like, come on, man. Plot. Plot. Is this character going to do nothing but talk to themselves for 9 freaking hours? um, so I just remember how that felt. And it's part of the reason why I think my books are so quick. Like I just get things going. I linger on what needs to be shown and lingered on, but I don't waste time.
Nice. I don't really have a follow up to that. Brennan or Candace, please jump in.
Candace is not going to jump in. I thought she looked like she was going to jump in. Um, I want to go back to something that you said all the way back at the
Mm-hmm.
beginning. You said that you didn't necessarily lean toward horror. You just wanted to tell stories that were raw and unhinged as they needed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if that's your own kind of, Joe Lansdale famously says, "Right, like everybody you know is dead." And I wonder if that's kind of your own personal version of what is going on the page is going to be not the first thing that comes to your mind, but essentially you're not going to self edit. You're going to allow the story to go in any direction it
Yeah.
needs to be, even if you're, you know, unsure of
Mm-hmm.
just how far it's going to go. I wonder if you
Mm-hmm.
could talk a little bit more about that.
Well, I think for me, the thing that I love about horror and to me, it's not important that something scary or bad happens. It's about how the main character overcomes that because stories are the way we show ourselves how to overcome adversity. They really are an evolutionary tool for survival. That's why storytelling is such a thing among so many different cultures. By hearing about somebody else's failures, fuck ups, etc., we learn how to avoid doing that ourselves in a safe, controlled manner. For me, horror, so much of it was, I guess I just gravitate towards it because a lot of my life, I guess I spent, I don't want to say a lot of time, but there definitely was this aspect of myself that felt fear and I overcame a lot. I was, very nervous, very shy, and it was just like one fear after another that I kept working myself up to overcome. Like I'm on this endless quest to fight my fears. So I don't talk about this very much, but every time I write a book, it's, as Chuck Palahniuk mentions, writing is a form of self-therapy. And so every book I write ends up being some sort of exploration into an issue or a theme that I'm struggling with or something that's coming up in my own life. And the thing I write is sort of my way of working through it. Divine Flesh was a lot of my existential questions because I was really struggling at the time with what does all of this mean? Religion this, religion that. It was also a deep exploration into shadow halves and embracing your shadow self. That is what the story is about at its core. And that was something I was trying to deal with at the time. Just sort of Exodonis was me dealing with, and there's a lot of collapse stuff in Exodonis I kind of like snuck in there, but me dealing with the theme of self, individualism versus collectivism, family. And so I just, sorry, I know this is a little off topic, but when I explore something, it's part of the reason why I've struggled over the years because I don't ignore something because it makes me uncomfortable. I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, this dude's saying something on the internet and he sounds like an asshole and he's saying something that's unpopular, so I'm going to just ignore it. I'm like, no, 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 this does make me feel bad, but I want to find out if it's really true or if it's not true. Is what this person's saying have any basis in fact? Or am I just knee-jerk reacting because they're saying something I disagree with or something that challenges one of my essential worldviews? I want to just dissect everything. I'm very much, and again, like I take an idea, I take a concept, and I really just plunge into, okay, what about the worst case scenario? What if the worst case scenario is true? What if it happens? How do we as human beings live and overcome that? Because you can't just lay down and die.
Yeah.
And I guess horror for me is, horror is a very real genre because bad things happen. We have very little control over our lives. People love to say they can predict the future, but let me tell you, in 2019, if you would have said to someone, hey, COVID's going to happen, it's going to like, people are going to work from home, they would have looked at you like you were fucking crazy. We can't, so many things just happen so, and it's even worse now because we're so globalized. Things happen, things happen, things happen. The world is like, the world's legitimately in turmoil right now on so many different levels. We as humans don't like dealing with the inherent unpredictability of life. And so sometimes people kind of numb themselves and they tune it out. And there are some genres like romance that are really good at that. I'm not harping on it. I think it's really good for people to have it escape. But horror for me is fundamentally about ripping that band-aid off and just seeing like, okay, the worst thing has happened. How do you pick yourself up and keep moving forward? Sorry, I know I'm rambling, but
No, we're here for it. Now, all right. So one thing that I really would like to commend you on is you took us Mariana's Trench deep on Freeburn earlier, and then managed to turn around and define the entire book in about 2 sentences. I want to give you a couple titles, and I would like you to, as best you can, give us that 2-sentence-ish pitch so readers can know what to expect. Let's start with the Exodontists.
Okay. Monster family, a cute little monster family, lives in a warehouse until their lives are upended when Spirit Halloween moves into the abandoned warehouse and sets up a shop.
Love it.
That's Exodonus.
Perfect. All right, the Divine Flesh.
Oh boy, that one was actually really hard to sum up in a sentence.
You can have up to 3.
Okay, so a disgruntled, nihilistic drug mule must fight the flesh-bending goddess, a cosmic horror inside of herself, when she accidentally takes a wonder drug and inadvertently sets it free onto the populace, while she and her ex-husband are dealing with a potential serial killer on the loose in a town already stricken by bigotry.
Okay, well done.
So,
and that's spring 2025 from Dark Matter?
yes. So Divine Flesh is very comedic. So here's the other twist. Drug Mule's ex-husband is actually in love and has this really cute relationship with the cosmic horror goddess. I'm not fucking kidding. It is
Nobody thought you were at this point.
And there is so much dark comedy in me, like in this dude who's like this electrician in fucking Idaho, and he's just like, Sweetums, what are you doing? Baby, what are you doing? You can't just do that. No. And because he was cheating on our protagonist Jennifer with the cosmic goddess while they were still a thing. So Jennifer just gives him shit all the time for it. Like, oh, that's your girlfriend? Look, she's a mass of tendrils. Wow, Daryl. Wow. There's just like so much. Yeah. Divine Flesh is interesting. So I like to subvert horror tropes. Freeburn, it was definitely protagonist. Like I made him a Middle Eastern dude because you never see any Middle Eastern people in just fiction unless they're like a terrorist or a villain or something. That's just terrible. That's awful. You know what? And it's like true, pretty much anyone that's not white. And that was also something I wanted to explore with the anger, because when people like to say, oh, white men get to feel anger, it's like, yeah, men get to feel anger. It's like, yeah, white men do. Not men of color. They get dehumanized if they show anger.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something I wanted to really show, like, no, this dude has every right to be angry. So I like to take horror tropes and subvert them. I also kind of subverted the whole, oh, he was born a demon, but it's super cool. It's like, no, it's not. That's actually not great. Let's explore the implications of this, shall we? I also, de-romanticized the serial killer tropes. I made it very realistic. Actually, the least realistic part of Freeburn is how like stable Mallory is, and we all know how stable Mallory is. Like someone that went through her amount of trauma would be like shooting up heroin. So Divine Flesh, and I'm just rambling again, but Divine Flesh, I wanted to subvert the cosmic horror is incomprehensible, but our protagonist is snappy and fun and going to destroy it. I actually deliberately set out to make this cosmic horror, the Divine Flesh, as human and cute as I possibly could. A lot of the book is from her point of view. And our drug dealing protagonist, Jennifer, our drug mule, is the nastiest, shittiest person. Like, think Mallory, but like even worse. The shittiest person you've ever fucking met. I'm not kidding. Just grody, nasty. Like, she's like almost a fucking sociopath. Jennifer's terrible. Part of the reason I made her so terrible was to make readers feel okay with the ending, because the ending is definitely, I knew I was getting a little dicey with that ending. But I wanted to subvert that and make the cosmic horror, and the human villains of the novel are just terrible. So I wanted to make the most human character of this entire book is Daryl to some extent, but we don't see things from his point of view. And the Divine Flesh, who's like so sweet and just wants to love everyone and everything. And unfortunately, in doing so, that sort of assimilates people. And she's just like not really understanding why that's a bad thing. She's just very sweet. So there's a lot of, Exodonis. Usually in a book like that, the monster family, they're the villains. In Exodonis, they're the protagonists. And the head of the monster family is like the villain. Like normally in Exodonis, someone like Garrett, who is the, mentally unstable villain, is the protagonist. I subverted that. He's the villain. He's super mentally unstable. And so the Exodonis are just trying their best to be kind and do, their family thing. And I like to play around with tropes.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, next challenge.
Okay.
You just announced Run to Beat the Devil with Darklit out in 2025. Boy. Congrats, by the way.
Thank you.
2 to 3 sentence pitch.
Okay. So this is actually in the Freeburn universe. This is from Mallory's point of view, but it's kind of a standalone. It works as a standalone. So the daughter of a notorious pyromaniac serial killer struggles with the memories and impact of the events that occurred 15 years ago when she was her mother's #1 assistant and the burner of the bodies. It's a story about as she struggles through these memories in a rehabilitation facility, she struggles to find redemption, love, and it's. And so this one's more psychological. I don't know. I've actually been struggling a little bit with this one. I think it's because it's still in its first draft, but it's more of an internal question because you're seeing this like creepy kid protagonist, and you're seeing her as a grown up, and she's just like has no social skills. And you're wondering, like, okay, does she turn out okay? Is she going to be like her mother? Because even when she's all grown up and the events of Freeburn have occurred and she's supposed to be in the safe place, she is still just struggling. These other these other, women are making fun of her. And she's just, and her, she thinks like a criminal. When someone makes fun of you, you fuck them up. So she has to really, and then you're reading about all these terrible things she helped her mother do. And it's definitely, I gotta say, I thought this was going to be a lot more fun to write than it is. This has kind of been like pulling teeth. I don't, it's going to sound mean. I don't care as much what happens to an adult. But even like toning it down and glossing over a lot of what happens to this poor young Mallory, because that's more realistic anyway, because, kids that are in really shitty, unstable situations just kind of rationalize everything. They don't process it. It's still just a lot harder than I thought it would be to just casually, even the little things like Lorraine just treating Mallory like just an object or an accessory, or not even like really understanding, or even neglect, the little things of neglect. It's just hitting me a lot harder than I thought it really would. Again, like I care. I'm not saying I don't care about my characters, but it's kind of different when you're writing about adults.
Mm-hmm.
It's just very, even though young Mallory is just kind of this little creepy asshole. I thought this was gonna be more like the Goonies, where it's like, oh, this cool smart kid is going on all these adventures, and no, it's not. It's like, oh, this poor child, just like, I want to just like hug this child character and like give her like a bowl of cereal and like a bowl of ice cream, and just like just tell her everything's gonna be okay. And I'm just like, yeah, sorry, I'm just.
I
So
think the
people will
parts.
come for fun and they won't get it. Okay. All
Drew,
right.
you sent me some parts of it. Sorry, Brian, real quick, just on this
Okay.
book. It's funny. I know you just said that a lot of it's not, and I get
Okay.
that. But the parts you specifically tell me it's funny, I read it. It is
Yeah.
funny. So I think it's worth throwing that out there. There are
Okay.
funny parts.
There's a lot of black comedy, and like Mallory, like young Mallory, not really understanding that like normal kids and families don't go out hunting for people and like putting them in the freezer. Like she doesn't like. So young Mallory is just like. She's just like there's one little really funny snippet where she's watching this show about this program about infestations, and she's looking at the show about like brown widows, and she's like, man, I wish I had a house full of cool spiders. I'd befriend them, then I could make them bite people I didn't like. Why couldn't I live in a house full of cool, like, she's just like so creepy. She also sasses Lorraine a lot, which is kind of funny, but it's like also kind of scary because yeah, so a lot of this was more literary, where I'm writing from the deep first person point of view of a 7-year-old who has never, ever been to school, never leaves this tiny trailer unless she is with serial killer mom, and has no, like, very stunted. But she knows how to, like, set fires and just, like, it's just super.
I'm here for all of that, but honestly, just that last little bit, the deep first person from the 7-year-old who stunted, like
Yes.
I'm that's what
That's
sold me.
that's the main draw of this book, is
Yeah.
that it's, so we have her modern day looking back at the memories, and she's also super funny in the modern day, but 7-year-old Mallory is very like, yeah, it's definitely been interesting because Lorraine will do things like gaslight, and she doesn't like understand what's going on with that,
Mm.
but she's like, but that's not true, you lied. So it's, yeah, descriptions, I have to really tone down the vocabulary. I'm like, she wouldn't use the word large, she would use the word big. There's she's also like a kid where she just kind of cares about like herself, and like she just wants to like eat snacks and garbage food all the time. So there's like a lot of comedy around that, where she's like, I had a really productive day. Bad woman was passed out drunk in the bedroom, so I made myself a bologna sandwich, and I sat down and I watched Ninja Turtles, and I like learned facts about Ninja Turtles. Like it's really, yeah.
That's
And I
fucked up, but
applaud you
it's
for that.
funny.
It's funny because before we got on here, I was reading a book, and I will not name the
Mhm.
book, but written from the point of view of a 12-year-old. And there was a phrase that basically, he was talking about the bully in his school, and he says something like that the bully, punched a hole in the wall in the throes of
Oh my
exonerable
God.
rage or something like that. It's like, okay, no 12-year-old would say that though. And this is
No,
first person.
no. Unless they're
Um,
like a 12-year-old that liked Tim Burton a little too much, then I can see it maybe like,
Yeah,
but
wears black eyeliner.
yeah,
My
yeah.
book
I
is
do think
awesome.
that you read enough first person,
Mhm.
from, that's supposed to be from the kid's point of view. Not everybody puts as much care into vocabulary as perhaps they should. One more pitch, and you are
Okay.
allowed to phone a friend on this one if you like. Blue
Okay.
Pig.
Uh-oh, we're
Ooh.
not done with
Okay.
it.
So
You could
we
pitch
still
it.
have the basic story. We know what happens. That's the most important part in a pitch. So Aslan Frank, a disgruntled missing person detective, one of the few real people left in this matrix-like wasteland where society has completely crumbled apart. Everyone has just given up and gone into these virtual simulated realities and left the world to rot. In this wasteland, Aslan Frank is a missing persons detective for those that go missing, as people do quite frequently in this just rotting world. And when he's all of a sudden framed for the murder of his son, Aslan Frank has to do the one thing he said he would never ever do: go looking for his son. And in the process, Aslan Frank, that's the plot. Aslan Frank has to befriend and deal with a man trapped in the body of a programmer trapped in the body of a pig in order to traveling through different worlds, different realities, while on the run from a psychotic computer program that can infect anyone, basically anyone, and possess them.
Would I be right in thinking that Patrick picked the name of your character?
Yes, I don't know what the significance of Aslan is, but I was like, okay, that's a name.
Narnia.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Narnia.
And
Yeah.
then Frank is from Anne Frank.
Oh my God.
I
It just
figured you
like
were going L. Frank Baum on that one, but
Nice.
now he's got
I
me
mean,
double thinking. I mean, I think of Anne Frank, and it was a while ago, but yeah, I definitely know Aslan was Aslan the Lion from Chronicles of
yeah.
Narnia.
I will tell you, the author of Wizard of Oz makes more sense than Anne Frank.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
back up. I probably did L. It would have to be him. I don't know. I said Anne Frank now.
That just regardless of the source material, that struck me as a very McDonough name for a main character. Having
Drew
read a
picked
fair bit of your stuff.
Drew picked the pig though.
Oh
Okay.
yeah. Old boy.
No, but
Dang.
just the one thing, yeah, the one thing that I wanted to throw in is that it's making me think about where we're going, how like we want to go to Mars and make that the new Earth. Some people do, and we're
Oof.
just gonna fuck it up. So that's you were saying that
Yeah.
our other virtual world um is a desolate place and pretty much a shit show too. And that's what I thought of. I'm like, yeah, we would fuck that up somehow too.
Honestly, even rotting wasteland Earth would be better than Mars. That it always cracks me up when Elon Musk is like, "I'm gonna go to Mars and live like a king." It's like, no, you're fucking not. You're gonna be drinking your own piss, Elon.
I
You're
hope he
gonna
goes.
drink your own piss as they recycle it. You will not. You will be living the nicest. The elites will be living in conditions that are shittier than probably the average suburban person on Earth. Let's be
That's
very
if he
honest.
survives.
If
We've never been there.
Mars is a desolate, waterless wasteland, and the thing is, unlike Earth, we know there's water, we know there's air. At the back of your mind, if you live at Mars, there's always going to be that worry: what about the water? What about the air? And no matter, I don't think enough people really are thinking about the psychological impact that's going to have on people.
Yeah, what if you
Just
need
that
help?
little niggling concern over time metastasizing into this constant nagging worry. And you're already going to be dealing with so many other psychological issues from that. It's going to be a nightmare, much more of a nightmare than just fixing our issues on Earth.
Yeah.
Seriously.
No, I was gonna say if you need help, you're not gonna get it. It takes quite a while to get there.
Yeah, you might want to cut the joke I made about Elon drinking his own piss, though. I feel like that's the sort of thing he would ding the podcast for or something. I don't know.
Oh,
Does he own Spotify? I feel like he probably fucking does at this point.
we're not even a ping on his radar, but I'll
Mm.
cut it if you
That's
want.
good to know.
I should also throw out because it was never explicitly stated that you two are writing this book together.
Oh
Yes.
yeah.
Candace, take over.
Well, I actually just had one more, and it is actually about your range of all the books that Brennan just had you pitch.
Mm-hmm.
I actually got to edit two of the three that are coming, and then the one you're writing now, I get to edit that one as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pretty familiar with how you write and the things that you already have written. So what the hell's next? Like everything has been so vastly different in style and tone and plotline. What's next? Like, where does Drew Huff go after this?
Well, I'm actually thinking about taking that concept I had for Leighton's first manuscript ever and writing my epic, where it's like The Stand. Like we're talking that level of epic. Reconfiguring that idea, redoing those plot lines, and just going headlong into, because to me, so as I thought about that idea and I refined it, it's less to me about what would happen and more about what would happen if all of humanity, basically Judgment Day happened and we're all in the Garden of Eden. And that's basically the lives these infected people live. They just, the pathogen like infects the plants, it infects the animals. There's literally like no strife. It's perfect. They live forever. They're just like they're just living their best lives, doing their thing. And so to me, this one's going to be really philosophical because it's exploring the idea of what would happen if all of the things we have built, our Tower of Babel, that I would say is our collective technology, our little toys, all of that. What if something fell from the sky and all of that was just annihilated and wiped away? And we got to the point to where just completely, right as humanity seems like it is on the brink of destroying itself in the near future, the nukes have been launched. We are literally, climate change has just run away, gone wild. People are waiting to die. Salvation comes down from the sky, turns people into, monsters. But what would really be the fallout and the philosophical implications if every single thing that we built over the thousands and thousands of years was just all of a sudden completely unimportant, didn't even matter? What if, would people still find meaning? What if all of the things and the false idols and the gods that we ourselves have built were shown to be the falsities that they are? And we could all live in this harmonious fashion, but would it be real? Could you theoretically take out the suffering of humanity while retaining, I don't know, or are we fundamentally just wired to be a certain way? I guess for me, it's sort of about exploring the idea. It's almost like this hippie thing, Age of Aquarius, where it really is about, okay, maybe none of these things and these toys we built and constructed are really important. What if the really important things are the connections we build and sustain with other people, the miracle of life itself? And I know I probably sound really touchy-feely, but there's a lot of horror because these are literally things that can just like rip a car door off.
Right.
They do not care. They're covered in these lesions. They're just like, it's very creepy. They're like something, they're not zombies, they're not really vampires. They're just these things that are really alien and no longer human. And also the implications of belief and religion, because the protagonist I was thinking about is this dude that was caught in the initial infection the rainy day, traveling around from just traveling across the land, writing these letters to people that regard him as a kind of messiah, and sort of just like, and just sort of like, but some of these these infected aren't really religious. So he's like this religious fanatic, like believes in and worships this, thinks it's basically God that rained down from the sky and like saved humanity. And then you have other ones that just have this more materialist point of view, keeping that ambiguity that I had in Divine Flesh. what is God? Is that even something we understand? What if all of our conceptions and ideas of what God is were just fundamentally like we just built this tower of cards? We thought one thing was true, so therefore these other things must be true. I don't know.
Right.
I go into a lot of philosophical issues when I write.
You wound
No,
up at what is God? I'm writing a story right now where the basis is what if a rodeo clown was sad? So I mean,
Nice.
Like,
That sounds
I,
awesome, dude.
I thought you were gonna say, "What if a rodeo clown was God?"
Dude, I thought that too. I was like,
maybe
oh, Brennan,
I'm only
let's
1,000
go.
words in there. There's
The
places
rodeo
to go.
clown said, "Let there be hee-haws."
Yeah.
Run, roll in this barrel.
Oh God.
Yeah.
all right. That was all I had.
Okay.
That was a part of the show where we wind down with a
Yeah.
few final questions. Where can people follow you?
At Dreadnought Drew on Twitter. I'm also Drew DRU Huff HUF on Instagram. And as you said before, Pat, I promote things and I network like the minimum amount that I need to on social media because I don't think it's good for humanity and it's certainly not good for my mental health and it's certainly kind of a time waster.
Agreed.
But yeah, those are pretty much it. I'm just sort of waiting for the next big thing to come out. You know, Twitter's on its death throes. It's just a crumbling, decaying thing at this point.
Mhm.
It's like a zombified corpse just staggering forward. So I'm kind of waiting to see what the next big thing socially is going to be before I commit to it. But yeah, Twitter, Instagram.
I don't think it's gonna be Blue Sky. There's talks of it, but
No, I
you
don't
know,
feel like it's going to be Blue Sky. I just don't feel that in my gut. I know that sounds crazy, but it's just, I think
no,
maybe Threads, maybe?
I think the tagging system of Blue Sky is fucking bullshit. It's so clunky and it's
Everyone said it's
long.
going to be Mastodon. I don't even hear about Mastodon now.
And then there's one called Slasher or something like that, like a year or two ago, and that just
Yeah,
had
nobody liked that one.
We
it
didn't
had
even
bugs.
know. Okay, you know what? Hot take. I actually think we might be seeing the death of social media in general right now. There's
That's
been
not a bad
Don't
thing.
tease.
Yeah.
seriously,
I've made my best
I
friends for
really
life, so
think
that's
a
fine.
lot of people are starting to. There's just been this collective shift. I think, you know, we're like kids playing around with firecrackers. We had no idea what we were really doing when we first had these smartphones and we first started the internet, social media. We just thought, oh, this is good fun. Now, you know, we partied too much. We have a hangover. We're starting to all realize this isn't really good. And now I think as some of these social media systems are collapsing, there's even talks that they're going to ban TikTok. And I really do think that they're going to manage that at some point, regardless of who's elected next year. I think they're probably going to make that happen, which would be frustrating for content creators.
A
But
rodeo clown, by the way, whoever it is,
yeah,
will be
uh,
the president.
whatever rodeo clown.
But not one that is secretly God. Perhaps one that is sad though.
But yeah, I think it's just been like an excuse for a lot of people to very quietly get off social media and not really try. That's why I think we haven't seen the next big thing happen yet because people are starting to realize they don't want to jump on the next big thing. It's like the slow domino effect. I also think I hate saying the forbidden word. I think AI starting to just ruin the internet and steal people's art. I know some artists that are just not posting on social media anymore. I'm one of them because we're just watching all of this shit. It is uniquely disheartening to watch your art get stolen, basically without your consent and being fed into the thing that's going to make you quote unquote obsolete. I think art is something fundamentally only humans can do. That doesn't, however, my philosophical arguments are not going to pay the rent.
Mm-hmm.
It's just frustrating because it's, you know, I was on a group chat with a bunch of other authors, and I'm definitely seeing some differing viewpoints on that. We were discussing it. Like, some of us are really hopeful. We think this whole thing's going to be the next NFT and just blow over. Some of us are very like, no, schools are pushing it. It's going to be the wave of the future. I personally think if we're going to extrapolate the future, all we need to really do is look at a fundamental rule of business. No matter how high you are in a corporation, who is ultimately your boss? The consumer. If consumers don't like what you're putting out and they all decide to boycott or stop buying, or the consumer knows that what you're giving them is bad, they're not going to buy your shit. They're not going to. And so maybe I am a little optimistic. Maybe I am kind of just thinking like, man, I feel like something's going to happen in the world that's going to kind of shake us out of this fad right now. I kind of feel that something, that collective unease, the calm before the storm, something's not quite right in the world.
I mean,
But
there's layers of AI, like your GPS or
yeah,
other things of that
I,
nature.
I get that. It's I think consumers are going to really draw that line. At least everyone I've talked to can't stand the idea of it being used for fiction. You know what? I live in a really rural
No,
conservative
that's
area.
awful.
Dude, people like when I mention that, like, yeah, that's been a big thing on the author chat. People that don't even write or read literally look at me like I've sprouted a third head. Like, what? What do you mean they can't do that? That's bad. What?
Well, I think part of it is, like you look at the AI art thing and
It's
the appeal of it to the average whoever is that it's art for free. But,
tech
you know,
pros.
as opposed to, absolutely, I agree, but it's art for free. As opposed to AI manuscripts, which are going to get thrown on Amazon for $1, you're still paying for it. Why, when you can get an actual book that somebody poured their heart and soul into for that 99 cents, as opposed to something that a computer generated? I think that's the difference.
That's a good.
Not to say that they're not both soulless and horrible, and my goodness, this is the most insightful yet depressing answer we've ever gotten to where can people follow you. But
Sorry, I'm just very but yeah,
Of
I
238 episodes.
fair warning to
yeah,
fair warning to anyone that wants to follow me. I post updates. I, reblog people that, good books or people that I'm friends with, but yeah, I'm not very active on social media. I'm just I also am a little disturbed by how much of our personal lives we're expected nowadays to give to
mm,
people that frankly we don't even know. Like I'm sorry, like potential follower, you're probably a very nice person, but that doesn't entitle you to information about my life or the lives of my family.
I agree.
yep.
Yeah. So, Brandon, where can people follow you?
Yeah,
On the arid desert hellscape under at Brennan LaFaro.
nice.
What about you, Candace?
I am at Candace Nola on all social media
Mhm.
or under Uncomfortably Dark.
You follow me at PR McDonough, except for on Instagram because some asshole hacked my account, so now it's Pat
Oh
R
my
McDonough.
God. I'm sorry.
Had that count from 2013 to 2023 or
Damn.
four, whatever. Um, yeah, so you can follow the show at Dead Headspace. It's on the usual platforms. I'm on there too much. Got to get off there. Got to be like Drew, and I'm not joking. I'm not being funny when I say that. Final thoughts for you, Drew. Any final thoughts?
Man, I guess I just want to talk to anyone that might be listening that's going through an exceptionally hard and shitty life event or things that happen that frankly are bullshit. Just keep going through it. Just do the best you can and keep trudging forward because at some point something is going to improve. It might be something very small. It might be something as small as I get to see a sunrise and it's very pretty, but things are going to improve statistically speaking at some point. Just keep going. If you want to do something, if you want to write, if you want to, don't think about the future, don't think about any of this shit or that shit or things that might happen or, or philosophical ramblings. Just think about what do I want to do in this moment? Do I want to write? Do I want to do this? What can I do right now in this present moment to improve my life? Sometimes the answer is, I want to work on my sketchbook and work on my anatomy, even though I'm not going to like it at first. Sometimes the answer might be, I want to write 500 words on this manuscript and go to bed. And sometimes the answer is, I want to lay on the couch and do nothing. I need to
Mhm.
do dishes and work on my life. I need to go visit my grandparents, and that's okay too. We are we are meant to create. we are not meant to just create and not live.
Mm.
That's all I really have.
That's a great. That should be on an epitaph. Epitaph. Said it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously, you're smart. You and Candace are too smart for me and Brennan. If you guys should have your own show. Seriously, Brennan, any final thoughts, sir?
Yeah, Drew, we did that thing that we do sometimes where we have a certain amount of questions or topics to cover, and we get so wrapped up in one that we don't get to all of them. So, I mean, there were
Right.
so many insightful things about the writing and the creation process that we didn't even get to talk about your art. I mean, look at that!
Oh,
Look at that cover!
thanks, man.
Look at that one! Look at that
Point.
one!
Good point.
Um,
In the interior, man.
Well,
yeah,
there's actually
and
an
not to
Easter
mention the
egg
interior.
that people kind of miss on the first one. So open up to the first illustration where they're getting it on, part 1.
I was wondering how you
So
were going
I've
to finish
actually
that.
really stepped up my game since doing these illustrations in Freeburn. They're okay, they're not great. So if you look at Mallory's left hand, what would be her left hand, what do you see if you look very closely at the ring finger on her left hand?
It's sparkling.
Somebody else, my screen is very tiny.
That
Oh wait,
ring.
her. Hold up. I'm sorry. I asked you a question
One
and
that's
then
not
interrupted
holding
her.
the shard of glass that she killed Bluing with. The other hand.
No, I know her finger's reversed, right?
And then yeah, because you're looking at it from a different point of view. So it looks like her right hand in the illustration, but it's actually her left. Yeah, you see that sparkly? You see the sparkly?
Yeah.
You see a ring on her left ring finger. You see an open ring box in that illustration.
Yeah.
Everyone, like, I keep waiting for people to ask about that Easter egg because in the book it's very ambiguous as to whether or not she puts on the ring that he proposes to her in the
Oh shit.
chapters. And he's like, man. And so because they just get right to boinking after that, and they're like both really drunk, but I wanted to kind of clarify their illustrations have some Easter eggs if you look.
That's
But
funny.
yeah, no. So she put it on. She could also see her kind of crying a little bit because she's like kind of sad that she just like roped him into this. If you really squint, you can see some Arabic on the wall. That's his like little shopping list he makes.
Oh.
Some little like pictures I drew.
Worth pointing out that you're also a fellow Rob Zombie fan. You can
Oh my
tell
God.
Wait, I mean, we've already talked about it, but if I didn't know that from
Yeah.
you literally telling me that, the titles, they're tracks of his.
It's the vibe of the book. I mean, Freeburn is like
Yeah,
a Rob Zombie book. Like Rob
sure.
Zombie and Chuck Palahniuk had a baby. Yeah, I've had some reviewers say some very nice things to me, like privately, and they're all like, no, this is great, but it's so hardcore. I'm kind of wondering if it's going to get nominated for some Splatterpunk awards. I wasn't expecting that, but if
Ooh,
it does, I mean, I'd be super grateful.
that.
Anyway, any
Yeah,
final thoughts, Pat, Candace?
Candace.
I can't follow
Yeah.
that. You already know I'm a fan. So,
Thank you.
fan, friend, editor. I just can't wait to see what you do next. So I have said everything to you off camera and everything. You know what I think of you.
Oh, thank you.
So I'm here for the next one and the next one and the next one. Just
Mm-hmm.
don't stop.
It makes me really glad to hear.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, they pretty much already said everything that I'd want to say to you. All three of us love you. We're your friend. We're excited to have your book here. But even if you weren't a friend, like you're incredibly exciting. Like
You.
I haven't stopped talking about you since I read the first short story because like you bring something really interesting to the table. We've already said this to you before, but you're like not to play it off, but you're 25. Like not a lot of people are this fucking smart as a writer, intelligence wise. Like you know what you want. That's hard to come by at that age. That's my opinion. I haven't seen it really in a whole lot, so I think that says a lot about you. Um, I just think that people should really, really consider putting this on the very tippity top of the TBR list. Free Burn, excellent book. It's a lot thicker than I thought it was too, because I did the voice to text.
Yeah.
So,
It's
uh,
400 pages. It is a book. I have never been able to write a manuscript under like 100,000 words.
Yeah, holy shit.
Yeah.
Well, I'll show you how.
Honest turned into
Yeah, Brian will show you. You guys teach each other the ropes of the things you're good at. Whatever. I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that. Okay, so next episode is 239 with Red Lego.
Ooh.
Can't wait to talk to her. Super big sweetheart.
Has such beautiful art too.
Yeah, she's a good artist too.
Mhm.
So hey, everybody, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. This is only the first time we're having Drew on. She's gonna come back a whole lot more. So stay tuned. Yeah, Make Choice in Podcast. Thank you for picking us.